Speak Up Africa is a digital platform that creates space for digital conversations to be made, specifically from end-to-end usage, from the users of the technological spaces, to the producers of it, to the creators, to the innovators, to the labor rights, to the policy increments, to governance, and all other technological dimensions. This is Speak Up Africa. I am Zaha Speaks. We inform, engage, and empower.
Hi, I'm so happy to see you back here today for another episode of Speak Up Africa, where we have very great, insightful conversations. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but for every democracy, the sovereignty of a state belongs to the people. And in Kenya, the Constitution in Article 1 affirms that. And civic education plays a very big role in this, from when we elect our leaders into power to when we hold them accountable for their actions until when we have another election. But do we have the systems? Do these freedoms belong to the people? We have recently seen a state where young students were trying to perform the artistic rights and just voice out through performances. And yet the government went and really took away these rights and freedoms from them. Today, I have Okoth Opondo, who is a civic educator, to try and put some things into perspective. I have listened to his interviews. I have seen him at work, and you are an amazing person. And Okoth, thank you so much for all the good job that you're doing, and karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Take it away. Who are you?
You said it very clearly. My name is Okoth Opondo. I'm a civic educator. And I can also say confidently, I come from the highest office of the land. That is the office of the people we employ, where the people put people to power. We are the voters. The president is in power because he's in office because the people elected him. Governors are in power because the 47 governors are in power because we elected them. The women reps and the senators, MPs and MCs, we gave them the power. We've delegated our representation power to them, and we can take it back. So that's why I say I come from the most important office of the people.
Great.
Yes.
I will cite an interview you did just the other day, and I was blown away by the insights that were there. And as you just mentioned, the office of the people is the highest office because we primarily elect these people. And we take them to office and give them the power to represent us. But the Constitution says we can speak our minds personally, but we can also do it through elective leaders that we put into places of power. And in this particular conversation that you are having, there is actually a budget that has been set aside for civic education that should be implemented and rolled out in different counties during periods of elections. And my theme this month is in between, after the ballot, what really happens or how should we do it? And if I take you back to last year, people took it to the streets because we wanted accountability. We wanted to bring these leaders to account for their actions. And you stated it clearly that, they get in there and it's like a selfish angle to them. It's how they drive, how they wear, how they build. So as a civic educator, what is the role of civic education in this country?
You see, I'm sure titles like mine are titles which are never there before. But we have to agree with the fact that things have changed. System has changed. There are days that I'm sure the generation that came before us were taught something called GHC, Geography, History, and Civics. And that is where this kind of education was coming in. Now, the most unfortunate thing is that civics was pulled out of education. People don't do it in primary, they don't do it in secondary, and even those who do it in high school, in campus, are only those doing courses related to that. Then it simply means that a few people have to step in and remind people that this is our nation and we have to do something for it. But all is not lost, because if you look at the role of art and culture, for example, the books that people are doing look at an example of the books that children are doing right now, Parliament of Alls, Fathers of Nations. We have books like, I've read a book like Bembea, but even if you go back, books like Kigogo, Kifo Kisimani, River Between, Enemy of the People, Mstahiki Mea, all these books are talking about the rot in the society.
Correct.
And we say all the time, fasihi ni kioo cha jamii. Kinaangazia jamii jinsi ilivyo wakati fulani. So for children to be acting how corrupt leaders look like, it means they've seen it. When, for example, Nigerians act about ghosts and everything, I believe there are things that are experienced. So these people are displaying things because they can see it, right? But let us come back to the conversation that we are having. Article 10 of the Constitution, it talks about the national values of our country. It talks about patriotism, accountability, transparency. When young people went to the streets last year, I can tell you, and I'll say this again and again, I do not think the issue is about finance bill or about taxation, because anyway, Kenyans are taxed every day. What Kenyans are demanding is accountability. Take even 90% of my salary, but by the end of the day, are we guaranteed that children are safe in school?
True.
Are they getting the right education? In campuses, are we guaranteed that the education that they are getting will eventually lead to jobs and will eventually lead them to creating employment opportunities for themselves, even if the government cannot provide it? Are we guaranteed that if you go to hospital, you'll get drugs and you'll not be told after being treated that, now go to a certain pharmacy somewhere
And get the medication
and get
from
it
them.
because it looks like a business, right? Are we guaranteed that when you're on the roads, you can walk freely and safely at night, especially as a young girl or as a woman in this country? When you get to a bus, are you guaranteed that the transport system is working? If all these things are working, then we can come back and negotiate with the government. At this point, it is about accountability. The same article tells us, talks about patriotism. That is what patriotism is, standing up and challenging the system. It doesn't mean that we hate the people. We hate how the offices are being managed. When people are talking about Ruto must go, it is not about, we don't care about who he is as an individual. We care about who he is as a president of the Republic of Kenya.
Exactly.
Taking it very fast to Article 33 again of the Constitution, which guarantees us all the rights of expression. You're allowed to express yourself. We have a Bill of Rights that also talks about our rights to assemble, to associate, to interact, to come up with ideas and put everything together, right? Then Chapter 6 of our Constitution again talks about integrity. And that is what this generation is demanding for. The generation that came before maybe were never interested about that. They were not interested about whether you killed or you are a rapist or whatever you did. They could still let you, you can be forgiven and given a second chance. This is different generation. We want to know, why should you lead people? Are you the right person? Out of the 50 million, why should you allow somebody be an MC in your ward or an MP in your constituency or a president? So at this point, what we are fighting for is accountability. Nothing less, nothing more.
Okay. Okoth, let me take you back to, you've highlighted very many issues that I will be picking them up. But ideally, for you to take up the role of a civic educator, I'm sure there are a few things that you saw in the society, in the systems, right? That you say, this cannot continue. And primarily, you are voicing out. And I want to commend you for the job that you're doing. You're taking it up by yourself to say, we want to form situations, environments, systems that can help people gain knowledge and know exactly what they're doing. From where you stand, do you think the government, all right, deliberately withholds the power of civic education from the people because then they know if we empower you with this information, you will therefore ask for such accountability? Because if you take it back to the shift from GHC to social studies and CRE, I think it was a deliberate move by the government, all right, to alter the system. And very many people have faulted the education system that we have had. And I've heard you somewhere conversing before and saying, by the time you are ready to clear the 8-4 part of the system and the curriculum, you will be required, you are almost a ready voter.
Yes.
But how much of the voting processes do you know?
Sure.
How much of the power and the rights as a person, as an individual, and fully as a citizen of this country are you aware of? So let me take this from you. Do you think it is a deliberate step by the system and the government that they fail to give us the civic knowledge that we need?
It is a very deliberate step. At first, I doubted, but when you're seeing that a government can even go out of its way and start tear-gassing 15, 16, 17-year-olds simply because they want to express how they are seeing community, how they are seeing society, it already tells you that they can do anything to interfere with the education system. And in fact, I'm even worried about the future of set books in Kenya, if this is the path that we are taking. So if you look back, and I'll give an example, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was a victim in Kericho. And I'll say here boldly because Kenyans stood up for me online and said they were campaigning for me to be set free. We went for a civic engagement in Kericho, in a place called Soin. And to be specific, when we arrived, somebody had already organized, and they brought goons to disrupt the whole meeting, simply because it was a meeting to talk about the state of stalled roads in that county, to talk about the state of security in that county. Politicians are doing these things deliberately because the political class fears an informed majority, an informed mass. Because the moment you want to rule people, keep them poor forever. If you keep them in poverty, keep them informed so that whatever you say becomes news. If today
They're vulnerable.
Yes. So if I'm the president of the country, or the governor, whatever I say becomes news, and everyone must always come and keep clapping. But we have to remind these people, we are past those days, the days of being called to Kufu and all. It is gone. We are in a new dispensation, and I still insist the constitution that we are having today, we have to guard it and we have to use it in the right way, because there are people who died for it. There are people who sweated for it. There are people who went to jail for this thing. And at this point, we are discouraging people from saying Kenya is worth living, is worth dying for. Now we want to live for it and achieve our dreams in this country. And we are challenging the government at any given time, please make things work. Because you see, if we do not really push for civic education, even voting becomes a problem. Because my worry is that sometimes I've even interacted with people contesting for political seats. They do not even know what they're contesting for. In this country, if you listen to somebody running for an MCA seat, MP seat, senator seat, governor seat, all the speeches sound the same. So you wonder, do they really even know what they're running for? Everyone wants to build roads, they want to build schools, they want to build hospitals. They do not even know that there are some roles, they're just oversight and representation. Others maybe have the power that they're talking about. So if we do not go ahead with the civic education, we will not even have an informed voter. An informed citizen, because if the citizens who are participating in the voting process are not informed, they start expecting unnecessary things from politicians. And that's why you hear every time when politicians come, we have to run after them. We have over-glorified them, yes. We've turned them to be like our small gods. And it is like we've made them start appearing. So we want to take that power from them. So that we can push them to a corner. And people need to know a political seat is a position to serve people. Not to keep ballooning your stomach all the time with people's taxes.
Of course, there are few scenarios that play out here. We are in a place and a time of awakening and change. All right. But some of these things have theoretically been there in our constitutions for quite a while. But what is the reality of the implementation on the ground? For example, you've quoted the constitution where it says people have the right of expression. But if you look at it from such a vulnerable state where kids who are minors are under the age of 18 are being tear gassed because of expressing themselves through a form of art. So where do we really stand? Do we have systems that really work? Because you and I can sit and stand and go through forces to fight for the place of civic education. But does the system of Kenya back us up and support us, and really allow us to make use of our rights and freedoms?
That's a very big question, and it's a question that we will keep answering from these sessions and even to the actions that we have on the ground. But here's the thing. Systems are made by people, and we are the people. This is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. So we are in this government. We have the power to make that system work. I'm sure some years ago, there's no way we would have held a conversation like this and talk about presidency and talk about leaders the way we are talking, without fearing that what will happen the moment we step out of this door. Today we can do that.
Wait, let me ask you, because I'll be very honest, there are some guests I've wanted to bring, but I have the fear of then what? And I think especially this particular year of 2025, they have become more rogue than ever before. And it's true, ideally, it's the government of the people, for the people, by the people. But kwa ground vitu ni different.
Vitu ni
Opondo.
different, true.
Is that really true for us?
That is how it should be. So then we have the power to make it be. Because you see, as long as we say it is for the people, by the people, and of the people, it simply means now we have to step in and take that power. For a long time, we've let it to these other people. This is the country that for the first time, at least, even if because of some hidden agendas, at least Kenyans saw that someone can be impeached. That has really given us courage. And that's why people are now even talking of collection of signatures to try see if we can push the president out. People are talking of collection of signatures to see if we can reduce the burden of governance in Kenya by reducing the number of counties. People are now talking about how do we make education system work for children and even for people who want to continue the education. So we are at a time that I believe everything is very possible, but only that it also needs people to rise up and make things work, because we cannot sit back and expect these people who sometimes are very clueless to have to make the system work. The other thing that also citizens must know, that you cannot elect people who are clueless and expect them to fix things. That means that some few people like you and the other people are very concerned about this country. A time must come that people like you or others must also rise and say, because I'm tired of A, B, C, D, and I know the solution, run for that seat.
Yeah.
Go fix it. If you can't fix it, you can resign and say, you know what, I've tried my best. Let another person come. Because the problem we're having in this country is that these political seats appear like the birthrights of certain people. Then it becomes a matter of life and death. Someone wins the seat, now they feel, no one can get me out of this seat.
Yeah.
We have to make these seats as hot as they should supposed to be. You are there, you feel like you're serving people. If you're not, people can come and say, you know what, we do not have a problem with you. Please step out, allow other people come in.
Okay.
Then we will fix the system.
Okay. Of course, from a very personal point of view, I still have acquaintances and people I associate with, from different walks of life. For example, today I was having a call with someone who is in the transport industry, who helps me a lot with deliveries and all that. And as a joke, when he picked the call, I was like, how comes I've not seen you post that we need change on your status, but you post about so many other things? And he was like, why would I waste my time, And I probe him and ask him, so does this mean in the general election of 2027 you're not gonna participate? And he was like, yeah, I'll probably be somewhere chilling. That will be a holiday time for me. And I have had guests who've come on the podcast and shared the same sentiments, that they know of young people who still are not willing to go and participate. So we have a very big difference between keyboard warriors, the young people who are actively participating in conversations online. But when we need them to rally behind the change, when their time has come, to cast their votes, they're not gonna do that. So as a civic educator who goes to the ground, what are some of the things that you're doing to ensure that we convert what we are telling you theoretically to practical measures to bring the change home? Because for me, that is what I'm passionate about. I want to have these conversations, but I want to go to bed at night knowing change is coming. Freedom is coming. So what systems can we use? What systems are you using qua ground?
Let me tell you, if this interview was to end here, I'll say this is the most important question that I've had across the whole of this week. Changing it from the words and from the tweets and the posts on TikTok to now changing people to actually see the need to wake up on that day and participate. Because when we started, you mentioned something that beyond the ballot, and citizens need to understand that the biggest role of a citizen is not voting. It begins immediately after voting.
Yeah.
Because once you have a president, whether you voted in him or her in, a governor, whether you voted in the person or not, the role of holding this person accountable now begins. On the question of whether we have young people who will not vote, the answer is yes. I interact with them a lot, every single day, even the spaces where we are. On the question on whether we can help them come out and vote, yes, we have a role. What are we doing? What are we going to do about this thing? We have to keep on making them angry. We want to make them angry and angry so that they see how every single problem they are facing is related to the governance of the country, not to the
Thank you.
president of the country, to the governance. So, for example, when transport is not working, how then do we link this to other things? When it is raining and you're stuck somewhere in Ngara and in Nairobi, the moment it rains for 30 minutes,
Showers. That's it.
yes, roads are impassable. People need to know that there's someone who should have fixed these roads and the drainage system. I ask people all the time, look at Article 43 of the Constitution. Even if you don't want to read the Constitution, I want to challenge you today. Just go and look at Article 43 of the Constitution. What does it say? That every citizen has a right to education, that every citizen has a right to adequate water quantity of good quality, that every citizen has a right to food, every citizen has a right to healthcare, every citizen has a right to housing, and every citizen has a right to, how do we call it, social security. Imagine the only thing that you need to be doing when you're at home is that when you turn on the tap, you should see water. If you don't see water, then it means your leaders are not working because you're paying taxes. When you go to school, all that you want to see are teachers in class. When teachers are not in class, don't blame them. Ask why they've not been paid. Because for you, your parents, and yourself, you're doing your duty. When you are on the road and you're driving home, what you want is security. When you go to hospital, you want to get treatment. Please, even if you don't want to read anything, just read Article 43. That Article 43 guarantees us everything that any citizen should get. If we don't get it, it's a problem. I really feel a lot of pain when sometimes I walk around and going to some of these level 1, level 2 hospitals, and you're still shocked to see women giving birth kwa veranda ya hospitali. How bad can it get? I feel so bad when we go to the villages and we find old men and women wamewachwa tu, just living as if they are nothing. These are people
Children
who
of a
built
lesser
the
God.
country that we have today. You and I would not be talking here if the previous generation did not do your part. And that's why I'm totally against this whole thing that people keep on saying that the other generations did not play their part. Every generation has played its part to leading to where we are
Today.
I feel so bad when you go to places like Kayole, and I'm saying this out of full confidence. People still fetching water using donkeys. Capital city, Nairobi, that is not even making sense, because the capital city that we're having, our own economy is said to be larger than 10 African countries. What then are we proud of? A city that we are not even sure with our safety, you're not sure of food, you're not sure of transport on the road. So if you feel that you're not willing to take part in an election, I'm telling you, whether you vote or not, you've participated in electing somebody. I would rather you wake up, do your part. And it is only when you wake up to vote and elect people that you then can have the courage and the power to say, Opondo, I elected you. In fact, without even asking you for money, without a leso, without anything, I'm demanding for this service. I'm demanding for this. Remember, then after the election, we have something called public participation. You are allowed within your ward or within your constituency to participate in decisions about your own community. For example, you have a right to attend some of those meetings and remind your leaders that at this time, priority is not a hospital. Every leader wants to build hospitals. Instead, or even checking at what are the diseases in this area. Maybe they're related to food. Can we maybe address the food issue so that we don't end up taking so many people to
those hospitals?
To the hospital? The issues in my area are about safety on the roads. Most patients in the hospitals are as a result of road transport. So then what do we need to address? Let's address the other one so that we reduce. No one wants to go to hospital.
And
no
I
one
like
wants to spend time in the hospital, right?
I like what you said, that it's like a copy and paste method of campaign.
Yep.
They all talk about the same things. Roads, tutajenga barabara, tutafanya sijui nini. But they have not really dug deep into the community they want to lead and truly looked at the needs and the wants of those people.
The needs, the wants, and the priorities.
Yeah.
this is a very interesting that I see happening in this country, that children or students have a right to choose a course, but they're told not to choose a job. And people keep on supporting this narrative. And by the way, if you keep on supporting this narrative, honestly, you're not a patriot. Because why then tell somebody to go? You tell children, okay, go study economics, study medicine, study. Then after that, unamwambia what? Take a trolley. Uza smoki kwa barabara. You know, sometimes you also have to be very honest. We are not saying that people shouldn't choose job, but here's the thing. Let government keep on fixing things, creating conducive environment for people to create these employment opportunities for themselves. We want more industrialization, and that is why devolution came. Devolution came so that services and resources can be devolved. The role of an MCA is to help a county discover its full potential. So we want to see counties maybe coming with diversified activities and services. Like, for example, if I come from a county like Siaya or Muranga or Mombasa or Kwale, what is this special thing that your county can do that can actually end up to establishing more industries in your area that can absorb more people?
Exactly.
I hate it when we realize that more than a tenth of Kenyans are living in this one city. This is a city that we are told we have about 5 million people at night and close to 6 million people, 6 point something million during the day. Everyone wants to come to the city. I go to Lodwar, you ask children, what is your dream? Nimalize shule niende Nairobi. You go to Kajiado, what is your dream? Nataka nimalize shule, go get a job in Nairobi. Then what is the role of devolution?
And I think devolution came to help them eat more funds, to be very honest, because they implement devolution theoretically. And I think Kenya, Opondo, we have that problem. Theoretically, we have very good plans.
Sure.
Let me tell you, when the bottom-up economy was being preached to the people, ideally, if some of those manifestos were implemented, they were really going to help this country, you know. But instead, when we got into office, up to now, do you know, sadly, I cannot tangibly say there's anything substantial that has been done, you know. So those manifestos are actually closed and put somewhere in a shelf, and now they're like, let's now start clearing the laws. So for me, devolution was a perfect idea to help this nation grow, because not everyone needed to come to the capital, you know. Not everyone needed to come and work here and get a source of living here. We would have been able to do that from Kakamega, from Wajir, from Kajiado, you know, but they just made this as a way to make their own pockets fat. Let me bring this issue of money. Money is a very powerful tool, which has blinded so many of us in the recent past. And I hope this awakening will bring a change. But even as we do the civic education part in this country, funds are needed. All right. So let me ask you, what are the ways that you've been able to raise resources? Because it's also not cheap and it's not easy to move about and be able to achieve the targets that you've had. Because these same politicians are using money as a tool to buy off people. So let's talk about the numbers, how money really affects the outcome of what we do as civic educators.
Great. On that, I realize that partnerships are very important because the same way we are sitting here today talking about this issue, there are about 6, 10, maybe even 20 or 30 other people doing the same thing. So we just need to find out who these people are and keep on partnering. Some of the sessions we do in the counties, we do them with already existing organizations that you just find and have an invitation or ask, can I join you? I feel like we need to share this. So in the year 2024, I spent a better part of the year trying to help citizens understand how the budgets of 2022, 2023 were spent, county by county, writing on a whiteboard or on manila papers and explaining. For example, Migori, your budget for 2022, 2023 was this, to be specific, was 13 billion Kenya shillings. Out of the 13 billion Kenya shillings, this is the amount of money that was used for, let's say, went to education. This amount of money went to supporting the county government. This amount of money went to... You have to explain so that then they start asking question, okay, fine. Now look, out of the 13 billion, we're using close to 10% of that money in running the county. The county has about 30-something, I think about 30 MCAs. So 30 people, we are using 10% of a budget to support 30 people at the expense of the other millions, which is very dangerous. So one of the things that I've really liked, and I do it a lot on TikTok, just the same name, Okoth Pondo, and we try help people digest these big terms. When Auditor General brings out the report and he says these billions are lost, where are these billions? We have to explain to Kenyans, and these are the things that we need to keep on making people angry and angrier. Because if you're not angry enough, you'll never understand what they say. There's this famous saying, I think, of a farmer, a friend of a farmer who visited and found the farmer was busy just doing his activities, and what was there? I think it was a cat sitting on a hot stove. And he asked, why not saving the cat from the hot stove? And this person said, don't worry. If it burns enough,
it will feel,
yes.
it will jump off.
We have to keep on the fire. And in this case, you know what I mean by the fire.
Yeah.
We have to keep on the fire until someone says enough is enough. And I want people, through the civic education, to know that governance is beyond those few people in the offices. It's the systems that we need to keep on pushing until they work. Because if the systems don't work, even if you switch Ruto with any angel, things will still be the same. So systems have to be fixed here.
So we've honestly, for me, I deeply feel that we've come to a time of awakening. What are some of the fundamental areas that even as you go out to do civic education, you are targeting? Because now we are gathering momentum, as we get to 2027. For me, at some point, I was feeling very disturbed because last year the fire was up and we were saying, no, we are not talking about tomorrow, we are talking about now. We don't want accountability for tomorrow, we want accountability for now. And of course, I will say this boldly and openly. I was part of the people who said, I don't want to hear stories of tomorrow. I want us to deal with you guys today. Can we start doing the audits today? All right. But of course, with consensus and everything, people were told, gather the momentum, go restructure, go, have the proper structures and what happens next. And let's meet at the election table 2027. So for you as a civic educator and for other educators who are listening to us, what are some of the fundamental places that we should really look at, highlight, to add more fuel to the fire so that by the time 2027 comes, we really see the change that we want to feel?
One thing, we need to understand that politicians think about the next election, not about the next generation. That's why all the politicians are talking about 2027.
Nice.
They're all ganging up. The new ones and the aspirants, everyone is talking about 2027. But think, as a Kenyan, today we are in the month of April. Schools are opening for second term in May. How are you taking back your child to school? Today you have a sick person in hospital. Will you have to wait until 2027? No. Today the roads are in a pathetic shape. Every time in the evening you have to run because to me, to worry, like how it rained yesterday in Nairobi, I'm just trying to think, if you had a child who was supposed to cross from the other side of Westlands to the other side of Ngong Road, how long must this child wait? Because the level of water sometimes can even take away somebody, and we've seen it happen.
True.
People even making fun that, hey, this time around the governor forgot to give us boats to cross the city center. We were just doing it by ourselves yesterday. So when we're doing civic education, to me, there are two key things. I want you to look at your life beyond the politician, because the politician is thinking on how to replace the other politician who is in office. That is the only way he'll see it as a success. So an aspiring member of parliament or an aspiring governor, to them the success is 2027. To you, the success is how you'll get to work tomorrow, how you'll get back home today, how you will eat today. So start thinking at life from that angle. So that when the politicians come, tell them, I have problems. If you can help me tackle this problem between now and the second Tuesday of August of the 5th year, that is 2027 as per the Constitution, then I can even consider having a discussion to vote for you. For now, this is my worry. Number two, we are human beings and we have what we call human rights. How are our human rights connected to the government of the day? And the third part of that is the human rights, for them to be realized, and the rights that I mentioned, the basic rights that you have as a human being, for them to be realized, we can't wait for 2027. We need them now. Now. When you talk about food, you need food today. When you talk about
True.
health, it is today. So the civic education we are doing is not about how to vote wisely. I'm tired of that nonsense. All this nonsense of voting wisely, hiyo itangoja. Honestly, because I come from the office of the citizen, office of the people, and that's the highest office of the land, we are talking about our needs now, not tomorrow. And I totally agree with you on that statement.
Okay. So maybe someone is wondering, and I appreciate, because we are a product of the People's Dialogue Festival that happened, and this is how this connection came about, and it was a referral from somebody who was part of the conversation. And what I want to encourage you is this: if you're in spaces where the conversations are happening, you are bound to meet more opportunities. And just the way Opondo mentioned, it is in these partnerships that the change will happen. So let's change the point of view to the people. You had mentioned public participation. What are some of the other ways there that the people right now can start sharpening their knives and gearing the momentum? How can they be part of these conversations? Not everyone can come on the podcast. Not everyone can have the capacity to speak out to other people, but in their own small ways, how do the citizens then be part of the conversations that lead, number one, to the electoral processes, 2, the accountability of their leaders, 3, to being part of the change of this nation? How do citizens do that?
We live in a world where technology is working, and to me, that is one. We can leverage on technology. Years ago, I'm sure, even for someone to be watched like someone is watching us right now, it was an achievement.
It was a
You had to say,
big deal.
nimekuwa VOK or KBC or KTN, Now, podcasts are here. You've started this one, you're running it. I'm part of it. I've joined you as your guest. Keep on bringing more people. For me, that is step number 1. Step number 2 is that for the person listening and watching, take the information and now start other smaller groups within your community. As simple as during a church service, and that is the day that all of us come. I would wish that every church service would just be dedicating even 10 minutes during a service before we end the service to talk about community issues, where even priests or fathers or who are pastors can be saying, okay, fine, every Sunday, 10 minutes is given to this youth community civic educator. Please tell us what are the areas of concern across this week or across the following months, and how can we be engaging our leaders? Because I can tell you, if you are to organize yourselves and form groups in your own communities, pulling the politicians will be very easy. These people want numbers. Take advantage of that. When you organize yourselves and pull them and let them sit down, times have changed. It is not a time that we want them to be coming and we ask them questions. I don't think politicians have the answers to our questions. We have the answers. They should be asking us the question, then we give them the answers. For example, how do you want things to look like? It's not the other way around. We've just delegated that power to them. So that is another opportunity. The other opportunity is that whenever there's any kind of public forums organized by the government or even the administration, like the chiefs in your area, please show up and be part of this. And if you find it not fancy, because young people say some of these meetings, they're not sexy, they don't look like
They're
us.
not palatable to them.
Yes, you see things like the words like baraza. For example, in the community down huko Ushago, you tell people, kuna baraza ya chief. People will tell you, number one, hapo either someone, it is about solving someone's marriage, someone has taken the other person's wife, or somebody stole another person's cattle or something. That word is a word that scares young people, especially at the villages. So if we can even come up with our own meetings and then give them the names that we want, then bring these leaders into these spaces, they will have to listen, I'm telling you. Come 2027, the voter age has totally changed.
Yeah.
Because remember, the youngest Gen Alpha was born in 2024. That means the oldest Gen Alpha is 14 years. 2025 onwards, it is Gen Beta. So Gen Alpha, in another 4-5 years, they'll be eligible voters. And you've seen how these kids are. Gen Zs, most of them are going to vote in the coming election. Because ideally, anyone who's in Form 3, Form 4 this year, if it's angered enough, by the time they turn 18, it will be 2027. They will participate in voting. And
let me pause you. Let me ask you to pause
Yes.
there a bit, because you've brought out something very that we cannot ignore. All right. There's the way from the shift from the old methods to the new methods, I think brings a gap to these younger people, and it's not palatable to them. I must say that for sure, I recognize and appreciate the shift and the change that has been there. The number one pivotal place being the demonstrations that we had. We had the buddies come out, and that was a movement that has never been seen, and I think might not be seen if people are not angered enough. But upon there's a gap between people who are hungry enough to get that information, and just the way we've mentioned before, and the people who will actually literally take the voters' cards and show up. For me, sometimes it gives me sleepless nights that I don't know if they will take it with the weight and the seriousness that is deserved, because there's a gap between our habits, there's a gap between our approaches with the young people. I don't know if you read, but there was a report that came back and said, especially in Nairobi, the 3 priorities of young people are entertainment, and in this particular order, entertainment, sex, and money. You have seen young people have given up in the education system. Why are we really going to school? And because there's no end to what the means is offering. You go to school, you study so hard. Right now we have technology giving us the power of being whatever you really want to be. So giving them books to read, giving them information. And somebody says, if you want to finish an African man, put information in books. We are not hungry for knowledge. We are not thirsty for this information. Do we think there's a gap between the reality of the Gen Z's alphas and how they will show up for the general election from a civic point of view?
Definitely, there's a very huge gap. And I totally understand that the gap is very huge. And I like the fact that there's that gap, because it is where now people like us come in. Now that we see that there's a problem between here and here, let us be the bridge. Let us link it. Because we cannot keep on saying that, they said if you want to hide something from an African, hide it in a book, to achana your narrative. Times have changed. Go to TikTok today, or YouTube. We are analyzing the whole constitution for people. We will let us make these things in a way that people can understand. I'm sure people were talking about a gap when maybe writing and reading started. The other generations, you are only doing storytelling and blah, blah, So things change and we have to change with it. So we have to address that gap. But through addressing it, we will make things make sense so that they can see why we need to keep on moving together as a country.
Okay. From our own point of view and where we sit, I have witnessed you being in a conversation where we said the government has money for civic educators. The government has a budget for civic education. And I will throw it directly to you. Have you tried tracing down these funds? Have you benefited from these funds? And if not, what is the plan?
I heard of this also recently.
Okay.
And one of the counties that was very proactive in this is the Makueni County, but it was under the governor, Professor Kivuta Kibwana, because for him, he was very intentional about devolution. And, devolution can only happen with proper civic education when people understand that this is the role of a county government. This is the role of the national government, so that when you are outside here and there's something that is happening, you can say, oh, fine. This is where the problem comes in. Because tell me, for example, without civic education, without the funds that we are talking about, reaching even to the communities become difficult, because civic education is something that politicians are not even comfortable with. But Kenyans are confused. For example, today if you are outside here, if you have a problem here, especially the roads, do you go to Kura? Do you go to Kera? Do you go to Kenha? Who do you go to? The Kenya Rural Roads Authority, the Kenya Highways Authority. Do Kenyans even understand which roads are under which authority?
Yeah.
Look at, from even the issues of electricity, honestly. Is it KPLC? Is it EPRA? What are these things? Because we know that we have all these parastatals with overlapping duties. And now the other thing that we have to fix even in the near future, whether it comes also to hospitals, or a very perfect example right now, TVETs, decent institutions, But look at all the bodies which are managing TVET. There are those that have their curriculum that fall under NEC, their curriculum that are falling under, I don't know which TVETA, that is the TVET authority. The Kenyans, these parastatals are really confusing. But it's only when we do proper civic education that we can make people understand, and then can also push the leaders to know that we understand who we are. And that's where the role of the civic education comes in.
Are you going to follow through with these budgets? Because I also learned it from a conversation that you were having that, oh, by the way, actually, there's money set aside to aid in what we have taken upon ourselves to do. So I think I'm putting you on the spot to ask, this is part of accountability that we are telling the people to do. And here you are learning that there's this right that you have to access certain amount of money, whatever way or form or shape that looks like. But they should disband this money to people, organizations to help in civic education. Are you planning on following through on that to see if there's access to these kind of funds?
So for the sake of accountability and for the sake of credibility and authenticity to our viewers, I promise that we are going to come back and even just do a 10 minutes video with you on that, to show people how to access the civic education funds within your counties.
So that's a good assignment you're going to take
I'm going to do it. And please, for every video that she'll be posting, put a comment there. When is the video on civic education coming back? Okay. Civic Education Fund. Now, let us take it as our own responsibility, because we are also telling the government to be accountable. Let's all be held accountable for the words that we are mentioning in this show.
Exactly. Yeah. And I will be holding you accountable to that.
Yes.
Kenya is a democratic state, and for sure, the power lies in the sovereign, and the sovereign is the people. And we hold the highest office in this land, the office of the people. And I keep on saying this. We at Speak Up Africa bring conversations to you to enlighten you, but most importantly, to empower you. As the young people and people of all ages and all walks of life, we continue rallying you to gather the momentum, because we are the change we want to see, and we want to feel and see this change. And part of your role and responsibility is to, number one, get information. Number two, use these informations as tools of change. And number three, participate in electoral processes so that you can hold your leaders accountable for their actions in those offices. My name is Wendy Lois. I am forever having these conversations to you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one. But for now, kwaheri.
Asante sana.
Speak Up Africa is a digital platform that creates space for digital conversations to be made, specifically from end-to-end usage, from the users of the technological spaces, to the producers of it, to the creators, to the innovators, to the labor rights, to the policy increments, to governance, and all other technological dimensions. This is Speak Up Africa. I am Zaha Speaks. We inform, engage, and empower.